Welcome, beautiful people, to Camp Koji. My name is Joel. Thank you for joining me as I break down the biggest gaming news from the week that was on the only podcast you will ever need. On today's show, we're going to talk about PSVR 2's price drop, Game Informer getting shut down, and Bungie imploding from the inside out. But first, let's talk about Avowed. Xbox has officially delayed Avowed via a Twitter announcement. They say so many games coming. As such, we're moving Avowed to February 18th, 2025 to give players backlog some breathing room. A photo confirming their first-party lineup for the year accompanied the announcement. So this was rumored at some point, I think it was early last week. And I think the rumor originated from Tom Warren, a very reputable source. So pretty much when it came out, everyone was like, okay, everyone sort of expected this announcement. It really was not a surprise. It also fell in line with the fact that when Xbox started talking about what they were bringing to Gamescom, which is happening at the end of this month, they talked about a bunch of playable titles, and this game was not one of them. And of course, a lot of people were saying like, yeah, this game probably should be there if it's about to come out. And yeah, this is one of those things that I brought it up here on Camp Koji in June when they had their showcase, and I said this game doesn't have a date. I would not be surprised if this gets delayed, and that's essentially exactly what happened here. It sort of also, in a sense, puts Indiana Jones, I feel like, in a bit of jeopardy. But what's interesting is that it sort of wouldn't make any sense if Indiana Jones got delayed, because according to Microsoft, this delay is due to so many games coming out. You know, according to Xbox, they are suffering from success, they have to push this game out of this window. Of course, you had your Xbox fans that were defending the decision. They were like, look, it makes sense, gives them a little bit more time. It gives Avowed its own window for the game, as opposed to being surrounded by all these other games that are coming out at the end of this year. I don't believe Xbox. I'm going to be honest. I just don't believe this. Tom Warren, now when Tom Warren reported on this, he did also sort of echo the same sentiment that the game was actually in a really good space, but they wanted to give it a little bit more breathing room. This is a part of me that I don't feel the need to blanketly trust that that's the only or the primary reason why this game was delayed. I feel like it probably just wasn't ready. Like it probably just wasn't exactly where they would have liked it to be. I don't think this is one of those cases that we've seen recently with Nintendo, where Nintendo will complete a game and just sort of hide it until it's ready and then they'll announce it. This doesn't feel like that to me. The other thing that's sort of weird about this, the reason why I don't actually believe Xbox when they say like, oh yeah, look, we have too many games, that's why we're going to push this game over into next year. Because there are other games that they have. There's another game specifically that's in this 2024 window that I guarantee you most people do not know about, which is Towerborn. It's a game that I feel like if you ask the average Xbox fan, hey, what's Towerborn? What's that game about? They would not be able to answer the question. And that's because Xbox has not really been talking about this game. It hasn't really been showcased. In their last developer direct that they did, the game, if I'm not mistaken, was not mentioned. If I remember correctly, in that June showcase, it was not shown. But in the photo that they tweeted, it shows that the game is still coming out in 2024. So I sort of feel like, well, why isn't that game delayed? That game could use the extra time, especially when it comes to marketing, for you guys to get people to, know about this video game. I think that we've reached this point where I'm not trying to say anytime an announcement is made from a company, put your tinfoil hat on and don't believe what they're telling you. That's not what I'm saying. I think more so I mean it from the perspective of there's a big incentive to portray this delay as such, instead of saying, hey, you know what, the game's not really ready. And of course, Xbox was walked a bit for this game being delayed. And yeah, I mean, it's understandable. Right now, Xbox is continues to be in this really, really weird position where it seems they can't really get any wins. And I brought it up during that June showcase where it was like, yeah, they're showing a lot of cool stuff, but none of it has any dates. And I just personally don't really have a lot of confidence in Xbox as a publisher anymore. I lost my confidence for this company quite a bit of time ago, where they can make a game. It's like, yeah, it looks kind of cool, but I'm always operating with a certain level of skepticism when it comes to their games before they come out. Like Indiana Jones to me looks really, really incredible. And I hope everything comes together. But yeah, there's just something about Xbox that no matter who the developer is, no matter how great it looks, I just always feel like something's going to go wrong. I think a lot about Starfield in that sense, where I'm not trying to say like, because Xbox got their hands on it in terms of buying the IP and publishing it, that it somehow put this stench on it, and that's the reason why I didn't like it. But there's just something about that mentality that Xbox as a publisher, for whatever reason, I just don't feel this need to really trust them. So their 2024 right now is a little bit weird, right? They have, it looks like if you're a PC strategy fan, you're eating well. They're talking about World of Warcraft coming in August, Age of Mythology in September. That's also coming to the console, if I'm not mistaken. Aura History Untold, the Diablo 4 expansion called Vessel of Hatred. Of course, you got Call of Duty, you got Microsoft Flight Simulator. So a lot of cool stuff. The one thing that they're missing here is, something that I feel like they need the most, which is a system seller. None of these are system sellers. Indiana Jones, I think, should do well. Do I see it, making Xboxes fly off the shelves? No, I don't think so. And I think it really also just goes back to this issue right now with Xbox, where even if I own a PlayStation and I've watched every single Indiana Jones film, there's just like that part of me that's in my, telling myself in my brain, like, yeah, maybe if we wait another year, Indiana Jones will come to PlayStation. Like, there's just no reason to doubt. Like, that scenario is no longer completely off the table. And I said that it was going to be a game that Xbox was going to, in my opinion, mistakenly release on PlayStation. That's going to open that floodgate, and that was Doom: The Dark Ages. The moment that you announced that game, where you bought this major IP, and you're giving your competitor the same exact game at launch, that's it. Now the floodgate is open. Like that mental floodgate of any game can now come to Xbox. You've opened it. So when something like that happens, a game like Starfield, if you're a PlayStation owner, you feel pretty confident that at some point Starfield is going to come in 2025. There's going to come a Starfield Complete Edition that's going to include the Shattered Space DLC for $69.99. That just is no longer impossible. At one point, it felt impossible. When they bought Bethesda, I think a lot of people, myself included, were like, well, I mean, there's no reason to put this stuff on PlayStation. It just doesn't make any sense. Fiscally, you paid over $69 billion for this company that includes, part of that money includes this intellectual property. It just wouldn't make any sense to give it to your main competitor, because one of the points of this game is to sell more consoles. The game changed because Xbox still couldn't sell any consoles, and Xbox couldn't still sell any consoles because Starfield just wasn't as big as they expected it to be. And I'm not trying to say they put all their eggs in that basket, but I think Starfield not really making the impact that they wanted affected them more than we know. And they just realized, like, yeah, it looks like we're about to lose another generation. And at this point in time, I don't understand why anyone would trust Xbox to buy another console from them. I'll be honest. It's looking right now like there's a possibility, which is like mind-blowing to me, that the Xbox Series may not sell as much as the Xbox One. That's crazy. And that is with the inclusion of a $300 configuration in the Xbox Series S. That's insane. Xbox One was a console generation that they admit multiple times that they lost. Phil Spencer has said multiple times that it was the worst one for them to lose. So for them not to be able to outsell the Xbox One is kind of a crazy thought. And it does, people need to understand that it informs a lot of their decisions now going forward of everything that they do. Amazon Fire Stick, no Xbox console needed, is part of their survival now. It's not really, wow, this sounds like a really cool direction to head in, No, it's like one of your paths is closed now. You ever play a video game where when you pick a certain piece of dialogue, a branch of the story is now closed to you? That's what happened with Xbox. It's like the moment you announce, hey, Doom is coming to PlayStation 5 day one, that decision, everyone will remember that. And, it sort of closes a path for the future of your story now, the moment that you choose to do that. Another piece of Xbox news that came out was, according to Windows Central, Microsoft and Activision have established a smaller AA game studio. It's composed of former King and various other employees to work on AA games based on existing Blizzard franchises like Overwatch, Warcraft, StarCraft, and beyond. This is really interesting to hear for a few reasons. Number one, I've said at some point, I think it was either late last year or early last year, that the future of our industry and the future of the health of our industry is going to be in AA gaming. I think that consumers have shown that there is a desire for us to get smaller games that maybe, don't look as graphically insane, where I'm seeing the veins in someone's eyeballs, right? I think consumers have said, yeah, we don't really need that. I would prefer a better frame rate than crazy good resolutions. I prefer something cheaper than $70 because times are rough right now. And for publishers, they look at it as like, okay, we can have a shorter development window. Maybe it's like 5 years. We can do 3 years. And for developers, it's a lot easier to handle. It's a lot easier to manage something that's AA. So this is something that sounds good all around. It does sort of feel like it's very mobile focused, which I think is cool. I think it should be part of their strategy. I hope it's not mobile only. But I think having a mobile presence is very important for Xbox moving forward. I think it's going to be very important for their finances moving forward. But a lot of people responded to this news appropriately. A lot of people are saying, so why'd you close down Tango Gameworks? That sounds like a really perfect AA studio you had. And look, I really wish we would have a very candid response as to why that studio was closed down. It just feels like we never will. I just think it really goes back to just Xbox as a publisher. They're not a good publisher. Matt Booty is now sort of the head of Game Studios, and I don't know, there's nothing about him in terms of what he said publicly about his new role that makes me feel very confident that he's able to handle all of these studios. There's just a lot of decisions that happen in Xbox that I don't really understand. I don't think it's as far as me saying, okay, it's time for Phil Spencer to step down. Like a lot of people keep saying that. I think that a lot of fans have lost confidence with Phil Spencer. I think Phil Spencer had a lot of great ideas. And I stand by what I say, which is that a lot of what's happening in Xbox, some of it is a bit out of their control. Starfield is the perfect example where it's something that they bought in. Like, yeah, maybe they financed them an extra year of development, but that game's failure had absolutely nothing to do with Xbox. They did incubate it. It had nothing to do with it. Kind of same thing with Redfall, where, yeah, Phil Spencer could have stepped in and pulled rank and said, no, this game's not coming out. But I think there was a bit of a trust for Bethesda. They wanted them to have a bit of autonomy. They made that very public when they bought the company, and it failed them. They were wrong. And I think it goes to show how important it is to have good producers, good publishers, good directors, good managers. They're just as important as developers, because if you're not there, you're basically like I always say, like, you're like the walls, you're the fences, you're the guidelines. You're the blinders that go on the sides of people's eyes to keep them very, very focused on their task at hand. And you have to be the person to step forward and go, no, we're not going to do that. That's why I've said so many times that I don't understand why, if I'm Phil Spencer, if I'm Matt Booty, if I'm Xbox, I'm going up to Todd Howard at Bethesda, and I'm saying, hey, it's great. You guys are finishing work on Starfield. Obviously, you have the Shattered Space DLC. You guys are hard at work with Elder Scrolls. We need you to figure out Fallout. So either tell us what you need. Is there another developer you see in our industry that you think can handle it? That you can appoint a main director that has worked on Fallout with Bethesda for a very long time to oversee it, while you continue to oversee Elder Scrolls. But there's just no chance in hell that we as a company are going to wait until you guys are finished with Elder Scrolls for you to start a new Fallout. It just doesn't make any sense. So sometimes I feel like Xbox is a little bit too hands-off, and you need to get more hands-on. And like I said, pull rank a bit and say, no, our fans, we paid for this intellectual property when we bought Bethesda. We need to make use of it. The show just exploded this intellectual property to a height that it's never been at. And now we're gonna what's the expectation now? We're gonna have people wait 7-8 years for another Fallout entry. Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense to us. Even Fallout, people are now running in droves to Fallout 76 because that's the only thing that's being updated right now. That's like the only new Fallout. Or you have like this mod, like the Fallout London stuff. Yeah, I wish we knew why Tango Gameworks was closed down. When you see another studio opening up, I just feel like it makes it so much worse. Let's go to our next story, which is about the PSVR 2. So PlayStation dropped the price of the PSVR 2 headset by a whopping $200, making the Horizon bundle $400 and the base headset $350. The sale ends August 6th, and August 7th is the launch of their Steam VR app, which can be accessed via the $60 PC adapter. A website called The Shortcut claimed they had exclusive access to Amazon data, which indicated the headset saw a 2,350% rise in PSVR 2 sales when the promotion began. Now, that last bit of news was a little bit weird. I was thinking whether or not I should read it because it only comes from this single source, this single website. Apparently, they have exclusive backdoor access to Amazon data in order to tell us that the PSVR 2 went up this much in price. I'm not trying to say that they're lying because it sounds plausible, but then at the same time, if you go from 0 to 2,000, then you just jumped at 2,000%. So I don't think it's really as super impressive unless we have access to a little bit of a deeper dive into that data because we don't know where the start was. But the headset did definitely sell out at Amazon at one point, which is great. I'm sure it's exactly what PlayStation wanted. I don't think it sold out anywhere else. Every time I looked at it from various websites, they still had it readily in stock. So it could be something that Amazon just had a low initial stock before the sale even started. Even though sometimes companies are told about these promotions before they go public in order to prepare them. Yeah, so this dropped in price, and, I spoke about it briefly on YouTube when I put up a daily game about it, a daily show that I've been trying to keep up with. And yeah, I've said it before in the show that I think that the PSVR 2 was probably one of the easier predictions that I made on the show. And it's really Sony. Like, PlayStation really made it an easy prediction. It just shows that PlayStation is just not a perfect company by any means necessary. And they are very prone to bad decisions, and they're prone to mistakes, just like any other company out there. And PlayStation just has a very bad habit of not fully supporting accessories and things that they make, right? They did it with the first PSVR. But it's just really interesting to see that the original PSVR somehow got more support from them than the PSVR 2. And they've put themselves into this position, I think almost a little similar to how I felt during Xbox One, where I felt like Xbox was like, hey, we got this great piece of hardware. You guys go create games for it. And it's like, yeah, that's not really how this is supposed to work. I think Nintendo has proven from the very beginning with the NES, they proved that software sells hardware. It's something that is echoed throughout Nintendo. It's almost, tattooed on the wall. Software sells hardware. And it is so incredibly imperative that when you create a device, you sort of, in a sense, become a bit of a pioneer to prove what that device is capable of. So Nintendo does it with every single thing that they create, no matter how insane it is, whether it's Wii, Wii U, Nintendo Switch, their 3DS, they're always there with something to stretch the limits of whatever it is that they're trying to introduce. PlayStation with PSVR 2, that should have been part of the conversation from the very beginning. When these conversations start of, okay, should we create a second headset? I feel like part of that is going to be, well, are we going to be able to support this headset? And then from there, bringing in, the heads of all of your developers, talking to them about PSVR 2 and saying, is this something you guys think you can implement? Do you think that when God of War Ragnarok is being, you guys are in the middle of that development, do you think that if we increase your budget a bit, you could carve out a small team to do a VR mode or something like that? Is that realistic? Is that something you want to do? Is that something you're excited about? And I feel like if you can't get that support internally, either you demanding the support, saying, no, you have to have a VR mode for these games, or you creating separate teams in order to do VR modes, or you going out there and publishing, right? So Sony had no problem going out and picking up the company that make Fair Games, picking up the company that make Concord, and saying, yep, we're going to fund this fully 100%. We're going to cover the bill for you guys to make a live service. That means that PlayStation had so much confidence in the live service play that they will open their wallet and say, yep, we'll buy the studio, we'll buy your IP, we'll cover the publishing for this game. But they did not do the same for PSVR 2. They literally created one game, which was that Horizon game. And they expect other developers to somehow sort of put the PSVR 2 on their shoulders and get it across the finish line. Now this play about putting on PC, which is kind of funny because it was one of the first suggestions that I made when I talked about this headset. I said, if they don't put this thing on PC somehow, it would be one of the biggest mistakes they've ever made. And I was right. It's a play that they're now making. But then you buy the adapter and you actually lose a bunch of features. So it just kind of doesn't, like, it makes sense right now. If you're able to get this deal, it's like, okay, that's a pretty good deal. But this deal is not forever. I can't imagine a permanent $200 price drop. Maybe they'll look at this and go, okay, guys, we have to at least drop the price by $50 now or something like that. I just can't imagine them having this on the market for another 12 months at the exact same price. So I'm sure next February at some point, I could definitely see at least a $50 permanent price drop for PSVR 2. People are saying that this promotion is also not worldwide, was something I found out. I think it's only in US and Europe. I think it is US, Europe, UK. So yeah, it's cool. But at the same time, I just really don't see it making a difference. Like, I don't see PlayStation looking at numbers and all of a sudden, emergency meeting, guys, we have to start making VR games. Like, I just kind of don't see that happening at this point. Our next story that I want to talk about is about Game Informer. So after 33 years, GameStop made the decision to completely shut down Game Informer last week. It was the longest running gaming magazine in the United States. The farewell message starts off: after 33 thrilling years of bringing you the latest news, reviews, and insights from the ever-evolving world of gaming, it was with a heavy heart that we announced the closure of Game Informer. Now, I think it was Jason Schreier who brought this up, that he asked an AI program, I think it was ChatGPT he mentioned, write a letter for shutting down a magazine called Game Informer. And he said that the response he got felt very close to this one. It kind of sucks that now we just kind of don't even trust something as simple as 3 extremely short paragraphs coming from people and saying like, oh, this must have been written by AI. But at the same time, it's like I also wouldn't be surprised if it actually was written by AI. The closure was apparently abrupt, as many staffers were not expecting it. And then to make matters worse, the entire website was immediately taken down, so writers were unable to archive their work. So when you went to GameInformer.com, you were just met with this landing page, no links, no nothing. All links were completely broken. So a bunch of ex-writers for Game Informer were trying to use the Internet Archive to hopefully be able to find some of their articles in order to archive it, which is pretty important stuff. I'm pretty sure from now on, any writers, if your stuff exists on the internet, you're probably archiving, or you should start archiving right now instead of waiting for something like this to happen. I think there's so much in common when it comes to a lot of these large companies. And one thing that a lot of these companies have in common is that they just really don't have any respect for their employees. That decision right there is just like a lack of respect. It reminds me of when, I don't remember what the parent company was, but it happened earlier this year where a parent company was shutting down a bunch of games that used to be under the Adult Swim umbrella. And they were completely removing them from sale. No one would be able to buy them. No one would be able to access them. And the people who originally created the games were basically saying, hey, can you release the rights back to me? Because there's just nothing you're going to be able to do with the game. You're shutting it down. You won't be able to make any more profit off of it. But if you release the rights to me, then I can figure out a way for it to continue, a way for it to live on. And it just became like this big thing. Like I said, it just goes to show you that a lot of these companies just have minimal amounts of respect for their employees, the people that they employ, and they just really don't care about anything but money. A lot of people were heavily affected. A lot of people were angry about this. And I think it really had less even to do with Game Informer. I think it's more to do with the fact that it was what was pretty considered, the last gaming magazine left. Game Informer was definitely one of the better magazines out there when I was growing up. I remember GamePro, I remember EGM, but there was something about Game Informer that was always pretty good, especially because I felt like they were the only ones that really got a successful second wind through their promotion with GameStop of, being able to pay $10 a year and you get a GameStop card that gives you discounts. And then also, you were able to get this amazing magazine every month. But, the Game Informer cover was probably one of the most important aspects of our industry in our industry's history. In order to be able to get that cover was such an honor for a lot of companies. It was a huge deal. And I always enjoyed that Game Informer understood how important it was. They always came up with these amazing covers. There was always excitement about what the cover is going to be, or who's going to be on the cover. But then the second part of that excitement is what's the cover going to be? So yeah, it looks like it's going to be Grand Theft Auto 5, but what's that cover going to look like? My favorite cover is one that I think a lot of people would agree with, which was the black and white Batman Arkham. I remember they had the variant with Batman and Catwoman. That was probably my favorite Game Informer cover. But it was definitely really sad to hear about that it got closed down. But I definitely quickly went from sad to pissed when I found out that GameStop just completely shut the entire website down. There is zero way to spend that. There was no, and I mean no reason for them to do that. There is no anecdote you can dig up. There's no business contract fine print for you to dig up where you're going to convince anyone that GameStop had to do this the way that they did it. You know, we can't see the financials of Game Informer. It's possible that Game Informer was completely bleeding, right? We don't know. I remember earlier in the year, they attempted to do something where they separated the magazine from GameStop for the first time, which was you can subscribe to the magazine without needing the GameStop card or whatever. You can just get the magazine, which I honestly didn't know. I thought they had made that separation a long time ago. I think that's just extremely stupid to me that you always had to go to through GameStop. You know, GameStop was using these guys. It just shows you they were using them as like a chip. Like you know, you want this magazine, so you need to get the card. It's like you're forcing your stupid card on me, just because I want this super cool magazine that almost really has nothing to do with you guys other than the fact that you guys own it. There was just absolutely no reason for them to take down the entire website, other than a complete lack of respect. It's just, who cares? Yeah, take the website down. There's no need for us to. It's like someone said, like I could imagine a scenario. I could imagine a scenario of someone at GameStop meeting with their network team and saying, "Hey guys, so we're making the decision to close down Game Informer. I'm going to email you a photo. This is the final page," and someone in network saying, "Don't you want to keep the website up? Well, how much is that going to cost me?" "Oh, this is how much it's going to cost." No thanks. I'm not going to pay for it. You know, like, you know, they could have at the very least said, "Hey guys, I'm sorry, we have to shut it down. We are going to keep the website up for another 30 days to ensure that you guys can archive all of your work." No. Sorry. Yeah, we don't want to pay that bill. No, we're just going to cut it off. And then to make matters worse, someone got on the Game Informer Twitter account in order to give the magazine a proper send-off and credit a lot of the people that made it successful. And about half an hour after they did that, GameStop completely deactivated the Twitter account. It's there's just no defending it. It's indefensible. I have hated GameStop for quite some time. I've hated this company now for over a decade. It's one of my most hated companies. Any opportunity that I have to get someone to not shop at GameStop, I take it. You know, I've had family members, friends that, you know, they usually default to me if they need advice about video games because they know that I've worked in the industry for so long. So anytime they have a question, they're curious about purchasing something, the moment that they say, "Yeah, there's a GameStop right near me," I go, "Nope, don't go there." I was like, "Do not go there. Go to Best Buy, go to Walmart, see if there's a small little mom and pop shop you can support near you." Anything. I tell them, like, anything, go anywhere. Do not go to GameStop. It has been my life's mission to watch that company get shut down. I hate it with every fiber of my being. And the type of hate that I have for GameStop is almost very difficult for me to express. I'm very happy to see more and more people understand why this company sucks so much. Like why everyone absolutely hates this company. And it's great to see more and more people join the hate rallies that I've been throwing for quite some time on GameStop. And I remember it started like a few weeks ago where the Xbox 360 marketplace was shutting down and GameStop's Twitter decided to tweet out, "Oh, I bet you guys wished you bought physical copies now." And everyone's like, "GameStop, shut the fuck up." Like, get the out of here. You know, the company talking about giving you $5 for a complete Xbox is over here saying, "Oh, why didn't you guys buy physical games? Why is there something wrong with the physical games market?" Oh, maybe it's because if I walk into a GameStop and you guys have anything that you consider retro, I have to pay like $200 for a Game Boy cartridge. Yeah, that seems very healthy. That doesn't seem very price gougey and taken advantage of from you guys at GameStop. My hate for GameStop is very deep-seated because I used to work for the company. And I saw a tweet that really pissed me off yesterday. And I'm going to read this tweet. I have to actually access it because I don't have it written in my notes, but it really pissed me off. It's from another YouTuber. His name is, his Twitter handle is RGT85, where he says, so let me get this straight, gamers. Because GameStop closed Game Informer and like 30 people lost their jobs, which obviously sucks. We should boycott GameStop so that 8,000 people lose their jobs as well. Some of you are absolute idiots who only think with emotion. Yes, RGT, that's exactly what we should do. We should boycott GameStop. And yes, that would lead inevitably to 8,000 people losing their jobs. Absolutely. Let me let you in on a little secret. Every single time, I haven't spent $1 at GameStop in quite some time. The only time I ever go to GameStop and it's to buy something, it would have to be an absolute emergency. Like, I just don't shop there. Now, time to time, I'll if I'm somewhere and I'm sort of bored, I'll take a walk. I was, walking through a mall with a friend last week, and they had a GameStop, and I remember we walked in. I was like, wow, this place is extremely depressing. There was one employee there, looked extremely depressed. And most of the times when I go to the GameStop, I'll have conversations with his employees. You know what I tell them? I tell them, leave, run, get out. I always have those conversations with them because it's a horrendously horrible place to work at. And of course, look, no one wants people to lose their jobs. That's not the end goal that we should want. But part of being human is that we should want the best from each of us, even strangers. We should want each human being to be able to operate at their best. And if you work at GameStop, you are not at your best. I've had people ask me in the past, hey, Joel, what do you think about applying to GameStop? My answer is always the same. I always say, does your age start with the number 1? If your age starts with the number 1 and you are legally allowed in your state to work at GameStop, I think it's a good first job. So that would be 16, 17, 18, 19. Once you pass that, then you need to start a plan to get out. That's why I always tell everyone. You should not be there in your 20s and definitely not your 30s or 40s. I've seen people that are in their 50s at GameStop. You should not be there. Not only is it a dying company that at some point is going to shut down, that's part of a little bit of my devil's advocate with Game Informer, where I don't understand how people thought it was a surprise. I felt like this was inevitable. It was going to happen at some point. If it didn't happen now, it would have happened within the next few years. Yes, I really wish that GameStop was a better company instead of, an absolute piece of shit company, because they would understand that this is a piece of gaming legacy. It is there's a lot of value in retaining it as a loss leader. But this is GameStop. This is a horrible company. Once again, they don't give a shit about their employees. And so I brought up the same analogy of Amazon. Like, I personally go out of my way to not shop at Amazon anymore. If I need something, I'd rather go local. If I need a book and I go to a local bookstore, and guess what? It's an extra $5. I'll pay the extra $5. And my thought process is very, very simple. There's more than enough information out there for me to know that they treat their employees like shit. Their drivers have to piss and shit in bottles and bags to get through their day because they're not allowed to have proper breaks. People are standing on their feet for like 10 hours at a time. They're treated like robots. They're treated dispensable over at these warehouses. I just can't in good conscience use Amazon Prime every single week knowing something like that. And the thing about it is that it's understandable. Like, everyone needs a job. I get it. I understand it, but sometimes, you have to give people a push. Sometimes you have to push people out of comfortable positions. When I left GameStop, I went to every single manager and I said, you guys need to leave. It's time to go. I went to every single manager in my district. Some of them did not listen to me. And I'm telling you right now, within years, I got calls and contact by them, and they said, Joel, you were absolutely right. I can't believe I stayed there for as long as I did. Sometimes you need to be the person to push people and go, no, you deserve better. You deserve a better place to work. GameStop is absolute shit. It's a horrible, horrible company. I could spend I could create a 2-hour podcast telling you guys horror stories about what happened to me at GameStop. GameStop was absolutely a catalyst for my depression okay? It was a horrendous place to work. I would sometimes work 50, 60 hours a week when I was a manager there. Zero support, absolutely no support. Like I said, I could give you guys so many freaking crazy stories. I guess I'll be here for hours. One that I've revealed before, and I think I've revealed it on this podcast. I talked about it when I replied to this stupid ass tweet about how, you know, we shouldn't talk about how shitty a company is because some people might lose their shitty job. No, I'm sorry. That's not going to happen. Where I talked about at one point, I was robbed at gunpoint when I was an assistant manager at a GameStop. Long story short, we had a district meeting. There was about 11 different managers there. My regional manager was on the call. My district manager and my manager were physically in my store. Okay. And during that call, my district manager was talking about, remember the one that's physically in the store with me, we were basically giving advice to the other managers. In hindsight, I was trying to teach them, hey, these are the things I should have been looking out for. Then in hindsight, I probably could have known that something was a little bit iffy about this guy before I got a gun pointed in my face. And I basically had my district manager told them, like, yeah, Joel was following his money handling procedures. For those that have never worked in retail, part of your money handling procedures is that you take money out the registers and you put it into a secure safe. And a lot of our money was there for the night. And the robber did not recognize the safe. I'll be honest, if the robber recognized it, you're damn right I would have opened the safe. I'm not getting shot for GameStop. It's not going to happen. Okay? But he didn't. So he was only able to get away with what was in the registers, which wasn't a lot. So he was telling them that, and my regional manager went on the call, and he said, well, I still think the thief took too much. I think he still got away with too much money. My district manager, with cat-like reflexes, immediately muted the phone because the next words out of my mouth were a string of expletives. Obviously, I was extremely pissed off. I never got an apology, a formal apology from that regional manager. My district manager told me he would talk to him. He acknowledged it was extremely uncalled for. It was wildly disrespectful across all metrics. Never got a call from that regional manager. But what was ironic and funny was that district manager visited me when I started working at Nintendo. And he came to me and he said, why'd you leave? He's like, what's going on? You didn't even call me? And I was like, I didn't really feel the need to call you. And the analogy I gave him, I was like, the way your company operates is simple. You expect me to mop an entire museum, and then you give me a toothbrush and a cup of water. That's how GameStop operates. They treat their employees like robots, disposable, expendable. I've seen it happen time and time again within that company. The day that company closes, I'm not really a big alcohol guy anymore, but I'm definitely buying a bottle of champagne, and I will drink on the grave of GameStop. It's a company that no longer should be allowed to exist. I don't care about people's desire for physical. I get it. I know you guys love physical, but there's still a lot of great companies. There's still a lot of great mom and pop shops that operate here in New York that you can go to. There's still a lot of retailers that don't treat their employees like complete shit that you can go to. There's still channels for you to get physical copies directly. And let's be honest, digital is inevitable. I will dance and piss on the grave of GameStop any chance that I get. If you haven't noticed, I'm going to say it again. It's a horrible, absolutely horrible company to work for. You see the minimal amount of respect that they can have for an institution like Game Informer. And that's not even far-fetched for me to say that. Game Informer was an institution in our industry. If they treat their institution like that, right? If they can't at the very least do something as simple as allow the website to operate for at least another 30 days so writers are able to properly archive their work, and B, have the absolute gall to shut down the Twitter account just because you have someone internally from the Game Informer crew saying like, hey, you know what? We think we want to give you guys a better goodbye than this one sheet piece of shit AI written word vomit that you guys got. Thanks for being part of our epic quest. Get the out of here. and then you immediately shut the Twitter account down, it's evil. It's an evil, evil company. Okay? They will always, now and forever, put money, profits above people. It's no different. No one wants to see people lose their jobs. But in my opinion, if GameStop getting shut down gets you to wake up and find a better job instead of doing it right now, when people are basically, GameStop is a ship with like 30 holes, water is coming in. You should be jumping ship right now. Okay? I'm not going to feel bad if you're standing, floating on a piece of wood because the whole thing is underwater. Because for whatever reason, you wanted to believe that GameStop is going to turn this whole thing around. Or, no, GameStop cares about me because, for my 5-year anniversary, they gave me a USB thumb drive. They care about me. They don't give a fuck about you. That GameStop, that company could give two shits about you. They don't care. There are a lot of companies out there that really do care about their employees. But there are a lot of companies that really just don't care. And GameStop is one of them. For those that didn't know, I'm sorry for that rant, but I am one of GameStop's biggest haters. Like, I just hate that company so much. And yeah, popping champagne the moment they announce they're shutting it all down. Our final story is about Bungie. But before we talk about Bungie, I just want to quickly acknowledge Intel downsized their company. They cut 15% of its workforce, or 15,000 employees, which is kind of insane. Still a lot of layoffs this year, sort of related to gaming. I mean, Intel, makes those delicious chips we love to eat. So last week, Bungie announced a restructure of its company, resulting in the loss of 220 employees, or roughly 17% of its workforce, including most of their executive and senior leader roles. Another 12% of their workforce, or 155 roles, will be integrated into SIE over the next few quarters. They are also working with Sony to establish a new studio to complete development on an action game set in a brand new science fantasy universe. This move essentially shrinks Bungie from 1,300 employees down to 850. To make matters worse, many employees revealed that social media was how they found out they lost their jobs. There's something that felt very inevitable about this announcement. There's something about it that the moment it is announced, there wasn't really much of a surprise. This is the second round of layoffs they've had in about 2 years. And yeah, there really wasn't anything surprising about it. Like, the news dropped and I went, oh, of course, Bungie's cutting more people. But, it's like when you peel the layers back of this layoff, that's really where some of the shock and awe sort of started to hit about Bungie. There were immediate calls. I was definitely one of them. It was one of the first things I tweeted for CEO Pete Parsons to step down, especially after a former employee shared a link to a car auction site profile that belonged to CEO Pete Parsons that revealed he has spent over $2.4 million on cars within the last 2 years. And of course, what's funny about posts like that is that you will always have replies that part of me just really hopes. I use my imagination and I say, these have to be bots. This is AI. There's no way a human being is responding like this. Where you see responses to that, they're like, oh, so what? It's his money. He can spend it how he wants. Bro, he's not going to give you $1 million. Like, what are you doing? Why are you guys defending millionaires? What's happening here? Like, what is this? You make minimum wage, you're defending millionaires? What's happening? What's the scenario we live in nowadays? Where people defending millionaires and billionaires, like, oh, that's nothing. Yeah, he spent the salary of a few employees, to buy things that are going to be stuck in a garage just so his rich ass could look at them, maybe drive them once a year. Yeah, get out of my face with that. So that was a huge part of the story. Pete Parsons took over Bungie, I think, 2016. And look, that's not to say that every single decision goes through Pete Parsons, right? This guy's the dictator of Bungie, right? But he's the head, right? The head, what is it? The fish rots from the head down. A lot of times, it's been such a constant and consistent throughout my life, throughout my career, whenever I've stepped into a business or I've heard about a business or a company that's doing bad, it usually starts with awful leadership. That's really where it begins. And it can affect so much of employee morale, and just overall the quality of a product can really be reflected in poor leadership. So it's not to say that Pete Parsons alone should take all the blame, but I don't know. Like, if an employee at Bungie does something, right? If they ignore protocol and they push through an update that breaks the marketplace or something like that, they're probably going to get terminated, right? Like, that's just the way that jobs work, right? You have your job description on paper, you follow it as best to your ability, but sometimes if you don't deliver, then you get replaced. That's really the way that jobs are supposed to work. But we're in this moment now when you get these 3 letters attached to your name, you have like this ironclad job security where you can just fuck things up like as much as possible and just still, and somehow still have a job. And that's what's happening with Pete Parsons. You know, Pete Parsons was part of that leadership team that told his team at Bungie, guess what? We're selling to Sony. Nothing's going to change. We're not going to restructure. It's not going to lead to layoffs. We're going to keep our independence. Every single one of those promises has now been broken. And I don't think that promise was ever made in goodwill. I don't think there was ever a moment where Pete, it's like one of those things where he told them, they're like, okay, guys, end of the meeting. And then the leaders went into a room and they went, you think they bought that? You know, like that's what happened, right? There was Pete Parsons and his team didn't believe that. I think that there was a part of them that understood that this was a Band-Aid and they were bleeding and there was no way that they could keep this going. And then we find out about, as you peel the layers back, you understand that, yeah, a lot of this is leadership, right? Because the final shape was fine, right? A lot of people were concerned about the final shape. It came out, it released, it was critically did well. It looks to commercially have done pretty well. But most importantly, critically, it did well. A lot of the fans were very, very happy with that expansion. So this comes to us via VGC. They say, quote, Stephen Totilo's GameFile newsletter cites 3 separate sources who each claim that these cuts were already planned by early 2024, long before the final shape was released in June. Bungie has been repeatedly missing Sony's financial targets and has been losing money since the release of the Lightfall expansion for Destiny 2 in early 2023. Although it was stated that Bungie would have full autonomy when it was acquired by Sony in 2022, sources told Totilo that Bungie management agreed last year that it would have to make deep cuts to prove to Sony that it was serious about managing its finances. Soon after, journalist Jeff Grubb claimed that PlayStation's takeover of Bungie has begun, and it's only a matter of time before they lose their autonomy and become like any other PlayStation studio. So this was a bit of a rumor that we heard when PlayStation first acquired Bungie. There was this talk about clauses in the contract of certain sales targets that had to be hit. And if those targets were missed, it would basically legally allow PlayStation to begin to take over part of the operations of Bungie. And that's essentially what's starting to happen here. But what becomes really interesting, though, is the fact that we know that they announced a game called Marathon. So you have this game called Destiny 2 that is not hitting its sales targets for whatever reason that may be. Sorry, I don't play the game, so I don't have a really good detailed reason as to why they might be missing their targets in terms of their monetization. I'm sorry, I haven't played the game in a very long time. So knowing that, you decide to work on another game called Marathon, right? Knowing that, you incubate a separate sci-fi action game, you know, that now is under complete control from PlayStation. So whatever that game was, it's possible that game could have been a multi-platform game, because it seemed like that was Bungie's desire, was to continue to remain multi-platform. They announced Marathon coming to Xbox. Whatever this game is, well, that's done. There's no way that PlayStation is going to allow that game to run to Xbox. They're not as desperate as Xbox. They don't need that to happen. So whatever that game, if that game ends up actually happening, that's now a PlayStation game, because they're setting up a separate PlayStation studio. We don't know the name of it yet, but it will be fully run by PlayStation. And then, according to Jeff Grubb, he's saying that it really is not even a matter of time. The process has begun. So it looks like Herman Holtz has some sort of control over their operations now, in a scope that he was never able to before. But because they missed their targets, I guess, enough times, who knows if it was a matter of frequency or a matter of numbers, percentages, we don't know the exact details of it. He now has his fingers, deep into that pie. And look, being on the PlayStation Studios is not the worst case scenario. Let's be honest, right? PlayStation is still an amazing publisher, but Bungie is now gone. I think I'm going to call the name of this episode Bungie Implodes, because that's exactly what's happened here. The decisions by the CEO, Mr. Pete Parsons, and the rest of the leadership team have lost Bungie pretty much forever. I think it's that might sound a bit extreme, but there's a lot of honesty and truth to that. Jeff Grubb claimed that Bungie veterans Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy have left the company. Noseworthy was at Bungie for 15 years. Luke Smith was there for 17 years. There was always something weird about this, this deal. I felt when the deal was first made that it felt like they were paying a little bit too much for Bungie, simply because Bungie was really only known for one thing, which was Destiny. And, they did it well, let's be honest. But then the issue when it comes to buying a company is that you're not just buying a company, you're not just, you're buying the value of that IP, right? But you're really only buying one IP, let's be honest. Marathon's not really an IP because that game is so old. And this new version of Marathon is nothing like the old one. So, like, this new Marathon, they could have called it anything. People were like, oh, that looks cool, because it's not really that super attached to Marathon. You would have had to play that game when it came out, in the 80s or something. So there's not really much value in the Marathon IP. So really, Destiny is the only IP that you have access to. And that's important because the other thing that's important, or the other thing that's part of that value when you buy a company, is the talent. But you have to make sure that you keep that talent. And for a company like Bungie, a lot of their employees own stock in the company. So there was this incentive the moment that it was bought. It was like, well, okay, why would I stay here? Why would I just cash out and leave? So I think there were some clauses that part of the deal of them buying Bungie was that certain key members had to be there for quite some time. And I'm thinking that maybe there was a clause for people like Mark Noseworthy and Luke Smith that if there was something like a restructuring, or hey, if they missed their targets or something, that there was like a back door for them to leave the company. And it looks like that's what they're choosing to do. I don't think these guys are leaving the industry. I could definitely see them coming together and saying, hey, let's start our own company. Let's start our own thing. But yeah, it's sort of one of those things where I think that this, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like, was PlayStation playing chess here? Was it something that they looked at those books, they looked at the numbers. There was a little bit of hinting from Stephen Totilo that I wouldn't go as far as him saying that his sources said they were cooking the books, but it was sort of a bit like maybe they weren't super honest with PlayStation about their finances. I don't know the validity of that, though, how truthful that is. It sounds like a little bit heard through the grapevine. But yeah, it makes you wonder, like, was PlayStation aware of this? Did they really look at it? Did their lawyers look at it and say, and go to PlayStation leadership team and the lawyers were saying, hey, if we structure it this way, we're going to control the company within a few years. There's no way they're going to hit these targets. And was it almost like in a sense, was it a bit like PlayStation was like, kind of hope you guys fail just a bit, just so I can have this company, so I can fully own Destiny now. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. It does feel like, was there a game of chess played here? The bad thing is, though, that PlayStation, Bungie has probably lost a lot of great talent now. They're probably going to continue to lose talent. And I think that is the big problem with all these layoffs, that I think a lot of really short-sighted, dumb gamers are not understanding the big picture. I think sometimes things happen and we think about it for 24 hours and we forget that these decisions can impact an industry for years and years and years to come. The impact that our industry is seeing right now is going to come back to bite us in 10 years. When you start to notice that game quality is just kind of shit, the games seem to be feeling worse. We're getting more of what we call MVPs, minimum viable products. And it's because, when you lose talent, you increase the chances that you lose that talent forever when your entire industry is in disarray. So the gaming industry is unfortunately at this moment where maybe your company's not doing good, but you're an amazing employee. You execute fully to a T, you're fired. Your company is doing absolutely great. The game is doing great. Right? Fortnite is at an all-time high. Epic Games is doing amazing. You're fired. The company's not doing, it's too hot. The game that they decided to put all their eggs into their one basket didn't work out. People weren't buying it. You're fired. Once something like that happens, we're seeing stories now of people that you look at their LinkedIns and they've been at, 4 different companies in, 6-7 years, not by choice, because a company shuts down and you're forced to go to another company. At some point, you begin to question, do I stay in this industry or not? And that's the scary part about what's happening right now, is that I, as a consumer, being a gamer for decades, I kind of don't understand why anyone would want to be a developer anymore. I'll be honest. I think that magic is gone now. Where I think there was a point in time where I wanted to be a game designer and I thought about it and I researched schools. Now, I don't know. Like I have a nephew who's really into video games. I don't know how I would answer my nephew. He came to me and was like, Theo, that's the Spanish word for uncle. I want to make video games. I'd be like, let's talk about that. let's have a conversation about that. Because it's like, I just I wouldn't trust this industry anymore, because it's an industry that will chew you up and spit you back out. It doesn't respect developers anymore. It doesn't respect consumers anymore. Everything is so formulaic. Everything is so mathematical. Everything is so much, hey, that idea sounds cool, but if this other idea where I sell these boots for $20, it's going to make me more money, that's the idea we go with. It's so profit driven at this point that a game that makes profit, maybe a little bit of healthy profit, everyone can eat, everyone's able to put food on the table, is not enough. I need my $2.5 million worth of cars or it's bust. I can't make that game. And the economics is just so broken in our industry that, it just kind of makes you question, like, why would anyone want to be a developer? You're treated like shit. You're overworked. You're underpaid. Consumers now treat you like shit. You've been working on something for 4 years. You show it. Someone watches your 1-minute trailer. 5 seconds later, piece of shit, garbage, trash. Everyone should be fired. How could you guys make this? No wonder AI is taking all your jobs. Like, what's left? What's left? What's there left to be proud of? And it's like, a lot of times you have, people like me that are like, oh, let's talk about the good stuff. Let's not just say something's trash. I don't, let's, sometimes it helps to listen to the positive, but when you're surrounded by just so much negativity, you just begin to question, like, well, what am I doing this for? And then you see so many success stories of people just making their own games, doing their own thing. And, I think what's happening right now, we're going to feel it for quite some time. We're losing too much talent. We're losing talent, and we're at risk of, once again, those people leaving to go to other industries and say, you know what, there's just not enough for me here. There's not nothing for me here. And hopefully those people leave and they start their own things, which is amazing and magical. But, you know, it might be in a different industry. Maybe someone just got fired. They're like, you know, I'm starting that woodworking, furniture building business out of my garage I've always talked about. We've now lost that developer forever. We're losing a lot of great talent. And what sucks is that the people that we can afford to lose, let's replace the CEOs with AI. That's the best AI replacement we can have. Your job could be run by AI. You know, let's feed the AI all my problems, all my profits, my losses, market data. Let it decide what we should do next. I'd rather have that than replace a voice actor, you know. This week's hot releases. We've got Pepper Grinder, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X coming August 6th. August 7th, we have Creatures of Ava coming PC, Xbox Series X, and Game Pass. August 8th, we have Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, finally coming to Steam on PC. So if you have Steam, you'll be able to access it August 8th. And finally, SteamWorld Heist 2, that is coming to all platforms on August 8th. Time for us to wrap it up. The stories we didn't have time to get to. An Activision study suggests that players are less likely to keep playing an online multiplayer game if there's no skill-based matchmaking. This is pretty funny for them to finally do this test, to put numbers out there to finally prove the reality of online multiplayer, which is that you need skill-based matchmaking. It's an absolute necessity of it. I'll be honest, I think most games, I use Overwatch as an example. Skill-based matchmaking there is pretty damn good. When I play competitive, I feel like I'm always in a lobby where, yeah, I should be here. No one here is like so crazy above me, but I also feel like it's a challenge, you know? Because when you play a multiplayer game, I mean, I'm going to speak for myself. When I play a game like Overwatch and the enemy team can't get out to spawn, I don't like it. I don't look at those games and I go, okay, cool. No, I don't have to sweat now. I can sit back and just grief this team that can't even get through the door because they just really suck compared to our team. When that match happens, I go, this is boring. I just wasted 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's not a good match. Okay. If you consider that a good match, you say to yourself, oh, you know, at least I'm not sweating here. In my opinion, then your priorities are all left up. Like, you know, why are you playing multiplayer game then? A multiplayer game is supposed to be a challenge, but it's not supposed to be so challenging that I'm going up against Overwatch League players where the moment I turn the corner, I'm getting sniped by a Korean 17-year-old. Like, no, that's not what it's supposed to be either. There has to be a balance, right? So skill-based matchmaking is absolutely necessary for a game like Overwatch and the quick play. It's a little bit looser, so sometimes I do get people like, "Oh wow, this person is a lot better than me," but that's okay. That's all right. That's fine. If the only way you can enjoy playing multiplayer games is to play against people that are really, really bad compared to your skill level, that's a you problem, buddy. That's not a them problem. According to Mario and Sonic Olympic Series veteran Lee Cocker, the IOC did not renew the Mario and Sonic license because, quote, they wanted to look at other partners on NFTs as well as esports. Basically, the IOC wanted to bring it back to themselves internally and look at other partners so they could get more money. Now, of course, the headline was the IOC ditches Mario and Sonic for NFTs. And I don't think that's the full story here. These games are not very profitable. Okay, the first entry sold like 13 million copies. The last 5 combined did not outsell 13 million. I think the last game sold under 1 million. Put yourselves in the shoes of Nintendo. Anything less than 1 million is an absolute failure. Even 1 million is like, for Nintendo, it's like, I don't know. Do we want to keep doing this? You know, like that's bad for Nintendo. It's just not very profitable for them, especially when you think about that licensing pie, right? Sonic needs a cut for all those characters. Nintendo definitely needs their cut, and they're going to ask for the biggest cut. And they deserve the biggest cut, let's be honest. And of course, the IOC is going to need a cut because you have to license the IOC, you know, Olympic logo and all their taglines and all that stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. So I don't think it was purely like, sorry, guys, we want that NFT money. I think it was like, sorry, guys, we're not making any money with you, so we might as well just look at other stuff. I don't think it was really just, one was sacrificed for the other. During a THQ Games showcase, they teased a new Darksiders entry, but did not officially reveal what it was. Part of the reveal confirmation on Xbox Wire reads, "It won't be long until we reveal more about where the Darksiders series is going next, but for now, know this, the Four Horsemen will ride again." Darksiders was definitely one of my favorite games, probably, I'm not going to say of all time, but definitely of that era, the 360 era. When it came out, what an amazing, amazing game. I feel like it got worse as it went along. I do rank them 1, 2, 3. And this is a game that is very simple concept, THQ. You put 4-player co-op, you print money. That's simple. You put 4-player co-op where each person is able to play as a different horseman. You print money. It's a money printing machine. Don't give no top-down Genesis spin-off crap. Give us a mainline Darksiders. Give us the 4-player co-op mode that was teased at the end of the first game. We will pay you money. We will give you cash in the end. That's all, literally all you have to do. Just execute. Okay, but start with that base idea. 4-player co-op. Do it. And finally, Power World community manager Bucky responded to claims of Power World being a dead game by saying in part, quote, "It's just not healthy for our industry because the more we push this kind of a narrative, the more very large companies are going to just say, gamers want more live service, and we're just going to get more of these soulless live service games that come out and they get shut down 9 to 12 months later because they're not making enough money, and we all lose in that case." Now, what people tend to forget about video games as an industry is that we were never meant to play a video game forever. It was never meant to happen. And I look back at a lot of games that I appreciate, one of those being something like Unreal Tournament. And I think part of it shutting down was the reason why I can appreciate it. And yeah, some of these games you can go back and, someone maybe set up a server and stuff like that, but it just won't be the same. I think that there are certain aspects of the human experience that are supposed to be temporary because it's the only way that allows you to really value that moment in your life. Like I really value my time on Unreal Tournament, my time playing Medal of Honor Allied Assault with friends, or Return to Castle Wolfenstein, or the first Call of Duty 2 on PC. The fact that it was a plot point in the timeline that is my life is what makes it healthy. I think it's unhealthy for us to have this expectation that a game is supposed to somehow last 20 years. It's not healthy. It's not a good mindset. I think that, I'm not saying that games are meant to be disposable. I won't go that far. But games were meant to be finished. Endings were meant to be forged. Every beginning has an end. In order for something new to grow, something has to end. It's just such an important part of this cycle of, I think, media, the cycle of consumption, cycle of loving these things, is that part of that health is the thing should end at some point. Because the only way that you can go back, reflect, and smile and talk about all the great times that you had during those moments. I don't think that games are supposed to last forever. And it's really weird that gamers have gotten into the pseudo financial mindset of like dead game, dead game, dead game. We're looking at profits. We're looking at numbers, blah, 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 blah. Like, we shouldn't be worrying about this shit. That's why I always bring that up with Game Pass when people are like, oh, how can Xbox sustain this? Look at the price. I don't care how they sustain it. That's their problem. That's their responsibility, okay? That's why they wear the suits. That's why they get paid the millions of dollars, okay? That's not supposed to be a burden on my shoulder. I'm just a consumer that says $20 a month to access these games. To be able to pay $20 later this year to play Indiana Jones, I'm all about it. I win. That's a W for me, right? Shout out of the week, we got one. Shout out to From Software. Elden Ring was the best-selling game in June, thanks to the Shadow of the Erd Tree expansion, which sold over 5 million copies in its first 3 days. Now make sure to subscribe to the Camp Coach on your favorite podcast platform so you can listen to it on the go. And if you already are, please leave us a review. It really helps out more than you know it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Please follow us on Twitter and YouTube for future updates. Once again, I'm Joel. I will see you all next week.